Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the best episode of Soul of the Skull history. You got Matt, we have Sam Z. Joel is doing God's work in a mission trip in Denver. We did receive a text from Big Lou. He's in Oklahoma right now, completing basic training. So, shout out to Big Lou and Joel for doing God's work. Samo is currently busy. And I don't know, we're just coming up with ideas and two distinguished, we have the credentials to rank quarterbacks. Um, this was an idea of Sam here, and I took it. Just had to jump at it because it's fun. It's something to do, and surely no one's gonna get mad at any of our takes.
This actually wasn't 100% my idea. This was the idea of my friend Sam. Funny enough. So while it was Sam's idea,
the power of Sam, just gave this great idea.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we just dive right into it.
Not much more to say.
What we're gonna do is we're gonna go the bottom six, the next six, and then 5 and 5, and then we'll go the top 10 one by one. Is what we'll do.
Perfect.
So yeah. So Matt, if you want to kick us off with 32 through 27.
All right.
You go for it.
I'll do that. You want to share screen real quick?
Yes, I gotta figure out how to do this. I haven't done that.
Usually Joel's the one that does this. So Joel's like, you guys want to do a podcast, go for it. And Sam here wanted to do one. Unfortunately, that means we have to figure out how to do this stuff on our own.
Yeah, so now, let's see here. I cannot figure out how.
Do you click present?
See, I'm trying to figure out how I can get. I clicked that, and it's not giving me the podcast one as an option. Let's see. Apologies for the technical difficulties, everyone.
Our two viewers are
share screen.
Wait.
Oh, there it is. Yep.
I think I shared it.
Boom.
Am I wrong?
Oh yeah, actually, you're okay. You're not sharing it. I am. Oh. Matt, where'd you go? I think I just kicked Matt out of the studio. I think I just kicked you out of the studio, didn't I?
What the heck, man?
That's on me. That's my bad. I'm still. Oh, okay. So I was trying to kick out your screen sharing from the studio. Instead, I just kicked you out.
Oh, that's what happened. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it.
So Matt's stuff is on the left. I'm on the right. And so, all right, Matt, if you want to go ahead and lead us off.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Math has been difficult for me lately, so I needed to count out 6. Starting at the bottom, we're going Daniel Jones. I'm going to preface this with, if he's playing the Vikings, he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. He will tear apart the Vikings, but any other team in the NFL, no. His career stats, 62 touchdowns to 40 interceptions, career quarterback rating of 85. I mean, he's his play against the Vikings, the reason why he got a great extension, and kind of the reason why the Giants are stuck with him right now. So we did do the Giants a favor. And kind of looking through the rest of it, these are a bunch of first-year guys / second-year guys. I think Bo Nix will end up being the starter, but even if Jarrett Stidham ends up being the starter, I feel like they both slot in well at 31. Same goes with Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy, although it feels as if Sam Darnold is going to be the starter for the Vikings at least. Best situation Darnold has been in when he's coming into this as a quote-unquote starter. We move up. We got Drake May. I think he'll be the starter there in New England. And then Bryce Young had a very not so good rookie season, but granted, the Carolina Panthers are a dumpster fire of an organization. To give him an O-line to work with, maybe he can show some flashes this isn't going to be their year. It's another rebuilding year. But as long as we're seeing growth from Bryce Young, he can shoot up this list at some point. And then Jaden Daniels, I think his just ability as a playmaker, the ways to improvise, and the way he can run the football, he's going to do great things for Washington. Obviously, he's on the slimmer side of quarterbacks. And Sam Howell, who was last year's quarterback with the Commanders, got sacked a lot. So the biggest concern is that O-line. Are they going to give him enough help? He's got the playmakers with Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson, and I'm going to forget everyone else. But I feel like Jaden Daniels has the opportunity.
Logan Thomas is their tight end.
I know you have Logan Thomas, Curtis Samuel, but I feel as if he'll have the second best rookie season. I mean, if it's a quarterback, he'll do the second best amongst the rookie quarterbacks. So that's my bottom 6 to start out.
Yeah, and I do want to preface this by saying we are going to have a lot of rookies at the bottom, because the only way there's going to be players that are underneath them is if that player has been an absolute dumpster fire of a player, however long they've been in the NFL. So like Daniel Jones, for example, like Matt said, against the Vikings is a top 5 quarterback. Against everyone else, he's number 32. That's why some rookies are over him. But yeah. And
it's tough to grade rookies. You're basically grading them based on how they did in college / the situation they're going into.
Exactly.
So it's tough, but it's I feel like it's accurate fairly enough. I mean, obviously it's going to change throughout the season when we see these guys in action.
Yep. All right. So my bottom 6 at 32, I have the Broncos situation, Jarrett Stidham, Bo Nix. To be honest, it's really brutal there. It's disgusting. They got so far starting Jarrett Stidham, and at receiver they have Cortland Sutton, and then they have Josh Reynolds, Marvin Mims, and Tim Patrick. Adam Troutman and Greg Dulcich are going to be their tight ends, and the running backs are going to be Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine.
It's not pretty. Granted, some of these younger guys like Dulcich, they were drafted in there to, potentially be good players. Dulcich is going into year 3. He was good in college. That's why he's been given such a leash. Marvin Mims was pretty decent at Oklahoma. He's going to step up now with Jerry Jeudy moving on to Cleveland. But yeah, Cortland Sutton just got to stay healthy, and same with Tim Patrick. I think he's missed the last 2 seasons with injuries, if I'm not wrong.
Tim Patrick's been injured a lot.
Yeah.
They also do have Lil Jordan Humphreys, which I believe is a rookie this year, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he went to Texas, but it's definitely, if we were ranking players by names, definitely top 5.
Top 5, Lil Jordan Humphreys. It's a great name. I love it. At 31, I have Aiden O'Connell with the Raiders. It's going to be him or Gardner Minshew, and to be honest, that organization is also a bit of a dumpster fire. They have, Devontae Adams, which is one of the top receivers in the league. And they have Jacoby Myers, both, pretty decent receivers. They just got Michael Myers from Notre Dame, I believe he's from.
Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers as your dual tight end group.
So they got a good group, but their quarterback situation was horrific last year.
I feel like with Antonio Pierce, though, too, he's kind of turned the ship. So maybe they're going to focus on running the football. They lost Josh Jacobs. I don't know who exactly they brought in to replace him, but that's going to be their main focus anyway.
So it looks like the Vegas their starting running back is going to be Zamir White, and their backup is going to be Alex Madison.
Madison as a backup is definitely one of the better running backs in the league, just not as a starter.
He's a great backup, and he always was a great backup for the Vikings. And then he got put in that starting role, and it was pretty brutal. It was bad. I think he had 1 rushing touchdown the whole season or something like that.
Yeah, and we didn't really have a great rushing attack at all last year.
No.
So, but I hope Madison does bounce back.
But yeah, so just a couple reasons in my opinion. Wait a minute. The Raiders have Michael Gallup?
He's coming up. So some injuries too, but it's a nice depth guy, I guess.
Yeah, he's their wide receiver 4 right now. It's Trey Tucker is number 3. But yeah, so the Raiders, it's just they've been just so bad the last couple of years that right now, and based on last year, based on this offseason, Aiden O'Connell, he's sitting at 31 for me. It's not been good.
He's really the placeholder until he gets someone in free agency or the draft.
Exactly. Yep. And I think the Raiders are going to have a decently high draft pick again this year. I don't think that they're going to be, playoff contenders even. So we'll see. That's just a big question mark. At 30, I have Daniel Jones. Like Matt said, he's a top 5 quarterback against the Vikings. Against everyone else, it's brutal. It's pretty bad. I don't think we need any more talking on him since you did, your piece on him. 29, I got Jaden Daniels. 28, Drake May, and 27, Will Levis. Will Levis did not perform to what people expected of him last year, I think. But I think that's because he was kind of just thrown into a bad situation. I'm curious as to what his stats were last year.
And Mike Vrabel offenses, as when he was the head coach there last year, they're more prefaced on the run. They had Calvin Ridley, and they still have DeAndre Hopkins. Even though he's older, he's still very efficient. They had Tony Pollard. So with the new offensive scheme, I don't remember who their new head coach is. I feel like he's poised to have a decent potential breakout sophomore season.
Yeah, and he didn't have a bad season. He had one 300-yard game. He had, he had 5 games under 200 yards. He only threw 8 touchdowns, and he threw 4 interceptions.
I think he had a 4-touchdown game passing.
He did. That was his first start. He threw for 238 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then after that, went 2 games without a touchdown, had a 2-touchdown game, no touchdown, 2 1-touchdown games, and 2 0-touchdown games. And he was also sacked 28 times in the 9 games he played.
Yikes.
That's bad. That's really bad. His QB rating was his passer rating was only 84.2, and his quarterback rating was 33.2.
I feel like there's a little bit of a correlation between some of these guys at the bottoms and just not having a good O-line.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, Levis, we know Levis can sling it. That's never been a question. But also, let's see who his receivers are, because I don't think it was. Let's see. Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins and Tyler Boyd. Okay, that's actually a pretty good group. Last year, it was DeAndre Hopkins, Traylon Burks, and Nick Westbrook-Akine.
Yes, sir.
That's brutal. And then he's also got Chigozie Okonkwo as his tight end. Tony Pollard's going to be their new running back, which is going to be good for them. And then they also got J.C. Latham and Peter Skoronski. They got Skoronski last year. But yeah, J.C. Latham, it was their first-round pick, I believe. And
he was the top offensive lineman in
Yes.
the draft last year, so they're addressing an issue.
Yes. So that was definitely just a perfect pick for the Titans. A perfect pick. Because they got to protect Levis, right? Because like I said, we know he can sling it. Now we just got to actually see it in action.
Absolutely. So that's our bottom 6. We're going
26 to 21 now.
Okay. Math is difficult for me. Anywho, at 26, you hit the nail on the head about Will Levis. I'm not going to go too much more into detail with that. I think if the O-line gives him time, he's going to show everyone that he fell into the lap of the Titans in that second round last year. 25, I put Gardner Minshew. If I were the Raiders, I'd personally start him. He just has a bit more experience, and he's won in the NFL. He's proven he can win. He can do things that Aiden O'Connell just can't. But, again, Antonio Pierce knows this group and team and his quarterbacks better than us college students. So I trust his judgment. But if it were me, if I were the Madden rebuild and the head coach, I would go Gardner Minshew. Former Raider quarterback Derek Carr, now with New Orleans, I put him at 24. I really thought last year he would break out, with New Orleans in that Dennis Allen system. And unfortunately, he didn't. I think he still has a little bit left in the tank. Obviously, when you throw to Chris Olave and they lose Michael Thomas, but obviously when you have Chris Olave, I mean that helps any quarterback.
And I don't think that they addressed that they have a wide receiver problem right now. It goes Chris Olave to Rashid Shaheed to Cedric Wilson. And then they have A.T. Perry, Equinemius St. Brown, Bub Means, like a bunch of guys that just have zero NFL experience or have never proven themselves. Chris Olave is obviously going to be the headliner in this receiver core. And then they got tight ends, Jawan Johnson, Foster Moreau, Taysom Hill, if you want to throw him in there.
The Swiss Army knife himself.
The Swiss Army knife himself. And then you got Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams as your running backs. I definitely see them having a stronger run game this year than the pass game, just because that receiver issue is going to be a problem. Plus, I believe that they're getting Spencer Rattler ready to start because I already forgot about this, but they drafted him in the third round or something like that.
This could be Derek Carr's last year.
It definitely could be.
Well, A.T. Perry, you mentioned him. He was a Wake Forest. I watch a lot of ACC football as a Clemson fan. He's a dog. So, and he got time towards the end of the season, and he made some nice plays. I think, again, when you try to address receiver room, you got to give these guys an opportunity to prove themselves. And once they do, well, you stick them in. So,
that's like AT. You have to put them in the game, and if you don't put them in the game, well, they're never going to prove themselves.
Exactly. You're a good coach, kid. Anyway, 23, I put Anthony Richardson, small sample size from last year, but when he did play, he was electric. The O-line hasn't been it's been better, but I think he needs to understand that he needs to protect himself. He needs to withstand the entire season, because if he was healthy all last year, this could have been a playoff team. They were just a game short of making the playoffs. He's got a rocket arm, incredible mobility, resembles a lot of Cam Newton. It's just all about staying healthy for him. 22, I put Russell Wilson. I feel like Denver itself was a horrible situation. It's just not been a good ran organization. I think getting a fresh start in Pittsburgh could make all the difference for him and show everyone that he still shows the flashes of his Seattle days. And now the new Seattle quarterback, he's been there a couple of years. I put Geno Smith at 21, played very well in his first full year as a starter, showed some regression in year 2 as a starter. I think he still has the opportunity to prove everyone wrong that he's not a 21st ranked quarterback. But it's just got to wait and see. When you got guys like DK Metcalf, that really helps you out as a quarterback.
And one of the most underrated receivers in the league, Tyler Lockett,
Jackson Smith-Njigba,
300-yard game every single season. My fantasy football savior, who got me 56 points one year.
Very smart. Yeah, he's very smart. Knows not to take big hits. Not a big guy either. Just a very smart football player.
Yeah. All right. My next 6 at 26, I'm going with Derek Carr. He just, like Matt hit on, did not have a great season like everyone expected him to. Did not break out like we were really hoping to see him do. They're going to have a strong run game this year, but their pass game is going to be kind of weak. At 25, I got Sam Darnold. Something I want to say about Sam Darnold is he's been in situations where with the Jets, his wide receiver 1 was Jamison Crowder. And with the Panthers, his wide receiver 1 was a young DJ Moore. And he said, I don't remember when, where, but he said best receiver he's ever had was that young DJ Moore. A young DJ Moore. And now he's got Justin Jefferson. He's got TJ Hawkinson. He's got Jordan Addison. Like, bunch of just studs of pass catchers. Studs, right? He's got athleticism. He's got a good arm. I think that, I don't know if you remember Panther game against the Vikings a couple years ago, right? His receivers had 7 drops. 7 drops in one game.
Yeah.
I think that Sam Darnold is actually going to have a half-decent season, and if we don't see J.J. McCarthy at all this season, I wouldn't be super surprised. I would love to see McCarthy get a couple of snaps, maybe play a couple games near the end of the year if we're not making the playoffs or anything like that. But seriously, Darnold, I think he's going to have a much better season than most people think he will.
He gets opportunities because of how high he was drafted, and I think people are still banking on what he did at USC. They still see that and the couple flashy highlight plays he had with the Jets. But you're absolutely right. This is the best situation he's been in, best receiving group. No TJ Hawkinson for at least the start of the season. But then we're kind of now banking on Robert Tonyan to do what he did in Green Bay.
And also, I think the best O-line he's ever had.
And that's the main thing with any quarterback. As long as he has time to read and scan the field, he can show what he can do.
That's exactly right. At 24, I got Bryce Young. Talked about him a little bit. I had an okay season this last year. He did have the least average time per snap to throw the ball before he was hit. Because that offensive line over there, it sucks. It's bad in Carolina. So we'll hope that he'll have a good season this year. And I think they just got a new receiver, if I'm not mistaken. Deontay Johnson maybe is with the
Panthers. Yes, they got Deontay Johnson. They drafted Xavier Legette in the.
So they're definitely addressing the receiver issue, and Adam Thielen is still there, so they got hopefully a couple more good years out of him. But yeah, so we'll see what Bryce Young can do in year 2. We got Caleb Williams at 23. Again, rookie, unproven. People are giving him, Patrick Mahomes comparisons. I don't really – I see the comparison. I don't think he's going to be at that level in the first couple of years at least. But I definitely see him, being really good, being a really good quarterback for the Bears, especially with the situation he's going into with all those receivers. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze now. I mean, they got a good situation over at the Bears for him.
Very good situation.
Yeah. At 22, I got another NFC North quarterback with Jordan Love. Jordan Love had an okay season last year. Depending on if Christian Watson can stay healthy and if their young receivers can step up, people like Romeo Doubs, if they're able to step up and start showing flashes of greatness, Luke Musgrave, we'll see what they can do. But Jordan Love, I don't see him doing a whole ton this year. I think he's still going to be near the bottom, near the middle of the pack.
Yeah, I mean, they addressed a running back concern. They added Josh Jacobs. They departed with Aaron Jones. So we're going to really rely on that run game to open up everything else.
Yeah. 21, got Tampa Bay quarterback Baker Mayfield, who actually had a really good season last year. His best season of his career, I believe, if not his rookie season with the Browns. But Baker Mayfield had a great season this last year. I think a change of scenery was definitely the best move for him. I think he's been with also the Rams and the Panthers along with the Browns.
Yeah, when you're with the Panthers as a quarterback, it's not a good situation no matter what you do. Can't change that.
There's nothing you can do. Yeah. So, I mean, I think Baker Mayfield's going to take another small step forward this year. He's still got Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, so I think he's got a pretty decent situation over there in Tampa, and they got a really good defense over there too.
Indeed, they do.
All right. Well, with that said, we'll go from 20 to 16.
Not too much controversy, I hope, here, but we'll find out. At 20, I have Deshaun Watson. Cleveland fans are still banking on his Houston Texans days as when they did trade for him and gave him a stupid amount of money. But coming off of injuries / suspensions, he's only played 6 games during his 2 years as a Cleveland Brown. He showed some flashes before going down with that season-ending shoulder injury. I feel there's no excuses this year for Deshaun. He's got some of the best playmakers in his career with Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman. You got David Njoku. To be determined about Nick Chubb. If we see the Nick Chubb of old, I mean, that's one of the top running backs in the game. Stefanski's got to kind of alter his game plan to fit Watson's scheme because it's not a Kirk Cousins at quarterback. It's a different skill set that Deshaun can bring to the table. But this is the year he's got to really step up and prove it. Otherwise, we are talking one of the worst contracts in NFL history. That discussion heats up again / holds merit. 19, Caleb Williams, as Sam said, best situation I think a rookie quarterback has stepped into. I don't know if you want to count Brock Purdy. I mean, he was the Mr. Irrelevant pick, but he was drafted into a great situation when he ended up starting and took the team to the NFC Championship. But as a number 1 overall pick, just all those weapons, a great defense, not a good defense, a great defense, who really stepped up at the end of the year. They had DeAndre Swift in the backfield, so a little upgrade there at running back. I mean, I think the sky's the limit right now for Chicago, and there's a lot to be excited about. 18, Baker Mayfield, Sam said earlier, had his best season as an NFL quarterback. You know, was signed into Tampa just to be the bridge quarterback. They were just hold him for a year and move on. He balled out, got that major extension. And he still has Mike Evans and he's Chris Godwin. That's all you really need as a quarterback. Just 2 guys that can get you 1,000 yards. If one guy's getting covered, another guy's open. Mike Evans has eclipsed 1,000 yards in every season he's had in the NFL. It's also funny because he's in the same draft class as Johnny Manziel, and we saw him fizzle out of the NFL early. I mean, that's like 8-9 seasons of 1,000-yard football. 17, his former teammate at Oklahoma, Kyler Murray, coming off of that ACL injury, played in the second half of the season. You add Marvin Harrison, that's going to be a very key thing for Kyler Murray and Jonathan Gannon in his second season. He's just his ability to still improvise and just make things happen when it seems like there's nothing open. It's just still remarkable the way he can waddle around and fling the ball to Trey McBride and soon to be Marvin Harrison.
Just make sure he's not playing Call of Duty too much.
Well, if it helps him play better, you got to find the even balance. But you're right.
On the weekends where it's like double XP or whatever.
I was just going to say, if it's double XP weekend, let him play Call of Duty because he's going to be locked in.
Statistically, he does better on double XP weekend, which is crazy, but it's true.
That's an ESPN stat that they should be really highlighting, not the random he threw the most touchdowns on the Sunday the 28th in NFL history, and those random stats. Anyway, 16, Trevor Lawrence. He just signed a contract that made him tied with Jared Goff as the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. I don't think it's deserved. I agree with locking him up. He is your future quarterback, but that's a lot of money that he needs to now go out and prove that he is worth that much money, that he is this generational quarterback he was touted to be coming out of college, heck, even high school. They had Brian Thomas after Calvin Ridley left. Did you see the betting odds? All right, I'm going to get off topic here, but Calvin Ridley's betting odds to sign with the Titans were like plus 900. It's like interesting that he would take the higher odds to sign with the Titans than the better odds of signing with the Jags. Although betting talk will never not be funny within the NFL.
It will not.
But yeah, back to Lawrence. I mean, year 3 in the Doug Peterson offense with Travis Etienne, he's still throwing to the likes of Christian Kirk. Evan Ingram has been incredible since coming over from the Giants. He's a good quarterback. He hasn't been great. And I think that's the thing a lot of fans and real analysts, not us, wanted to see him just finally take that step to say, I am this great quarterback. I am why you compared me to Peyton Manning. It's just put up or shut up time.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. All right. My 16 to 21. In the 20 spot, I got Geno Smith, very close to where Matt had him at 21. He hit the nail right on the head there. Geno Smith, it's he's in a really good situation. He needs to take a step forward now. He had a not a bad season last year, but a worse season last year than he had previously. Definitely needs to take a step forward here. Kyler Murray, I think we pretty much covered him pretty well. Anthony Richardson, I have quite a bit higher than you, Matt, for this reason. His receivers this year are going to be Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell, and Alec Pierce.
That's a very good four.
That's 4 solid receivers.
And you have to add Jonathan Taylor in the backfield as well.
Yes.
That's a nasty read option right there.
Yeah, and the backup is Trey Sermon.
He hasn't done much in the NFL. He's still hyped from the college days.
He is. Which team was he with before? Was it the Niners?
He was, I think, with the Eagles.
With the Eagles?
He was with the Eagles once. He could have been with another team. If they would have somehow retained Zach Moss, watch out. But obviously, he was a high asking price after he played very well.
True. So let's see. He was with San Fran in 21. He went 41 for 161 and a touchdown. Eagles in 22. Colts in 23. This last year, he went 35 for 160 and no touchdowns.
Another thing with
7 first downs.
Another thing about Trey Sermon was he was that same draft class as Elijah Mitchell, who ended up beating him out. And Elijah Mitchell was a 7th round pick.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's a work ethic question or just.
That's definitely a possibility. But I do definitely see Trey Sermon with Jonathan Taylor having one of his worst seasons in recent history last year. I mean, he's been, a good back, but he's been battling injuries recently. So hasn't been, his best. But I think Trey Sermon is definitely a serviceable backup. So, I mean, like you said, that read option, it's going to be crazy, right? And then here's the thing. If you can run a split back or a diamond back or whatever, and you can run triple option even, you're in a good situation. You got 3 solid runners there. And of course, for their backup, they got Joe Flacco for the insurance in case Richardson does get injured. He performed well with the Browns last year, but back to being a backup for Joe Flacco. Other than that, Russell Wilson at 17. He's going into an okay situation with Pittsburgh. However, he had kind of a sleeper season with the Broncos last year, I think.
He played so well, the Broncos were ready to bench him.
The Broncos were ready to bench him. Russell Wilson, here's the thing. The Broncos were in a pretty junky situation last year. Their coaching is horrific. I think Russell Wilson's actually going to do better with Pittsburgh than people expect him to. Because here's the thing. Justin Fields, right? He's had, 3 years in the league now, right?
Yep.
He has not performed to what he was expected to, but he's young and you could still mold him to what you need him to be. Russell Wilson's not that young anymore, right? He's 35.
Yep.
There's a reason he's the starter.
And when I say they were ready to bench him, because it felt like the Broncos were trying to tank. It's not because he was playing bad.
Sure. But yeah, I don't know. I think Russell Wilson takes a step forward here. I don't think that he's going to do as bad as people think he will.
I think that's a great take.
And then at 16, I have Aaron Rodgers. Maybe a little bit low compared to what some people think. He does have Garrett Wilson, who's one of the better young receivers in the NFL right now. I'm not sure how he's going to perform on that Achilles tear.
His voodoo magic he did, and granted, you're going to now have that same sort of topic discussion needs to be had with Kirk Cousins as well.
Yes.
Who I'm going to assume, because I haven't seen him yet, he's going to be higher than Aaron Rodgers. They add Mike Williams, and it's the same issue, injury riddled. But when he's on the field, he performs at a high level, and they're addressing the O-line situation because it's really bad.
Well, when your quarterback tears his Achilles tendon before you can throw a pass with your team.
Now, was that the O-line's fault, or was it more MetLife?
You know what? That's a fair take. That's fair.
It could be a mix of both. It was only 4 plays, so it's hard to make a certain take there. But after watching Zach Wilson, and I don't know how this guy can make the NFL, Tim Boyle get slaughtered back there, you can say the O-line wasn't good. That's a fair take.
Yep. All right. 15-11 will be our next 5.
We'll try to go a little quicker here. Life is a thing. Some of us have other things to attend to that aren't talking quarterbacks. Number 15, I have Jared Goff. Again, very consistent in his time with Detroit. He's got weapons galore with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams, I feel like, is going to take a big step this year. You got generic white tight end that I'm already blanking on his name. Sam Laporta. I was thinking Brock Wright for a second. But I know he is a tight end, but he's not Sam Laporta. Yeah, and obviously you have a running back room of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery and a fiery head coach of Dan Campbell that inspires his players. I mean, he goes out and he balls out and he becomes tied with Trevor Lawrence as one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. I think another good season in store for Detroit. We move up a spot, Brock Purdy, inarguably one of the best situations in all the NFL in terms of talent around him. They're figuring out contract deals with Deebo Samuel. The Brandon Ayuk situation seems like it's heading to a divorce. They added Ricky Pearsall, who has got some nasty highlight reels at Florida, can come and fill in that spot. But obviously you have George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey can do it all out of the backfield, and Kittle will always be one of the top tight ends as long as he's healthy. I think it's another NFC championship run for the 49ers if all the stars align there. 13, this is where we differ a lot. I put Jordan Love. The way he finished that second half of the season is kind of why I bumped him up. His performance against Dallas in the wild card game was special. Just really fun to watch Dallas lose. You know, you're not rooting for your division rival by any means. It was nice to see him then lose to San Francisco. But watching them knock Dallas out of the playoffs and just humiliate them was a joy to watch. And I think he only improves. He sat behind Aaron Rodgers all those time. He's mimicked a little bit of what Aaron Rodgers has done in terms of his release, his footwork. You said it well with Christian Watson if he can stay healthy, but I feel like it's a receiver by committee there. Bo Melton had over 100-yard game against the Vikings. Not saying much, but he did go over 100 yards. You got Romeo Doubs. You have a young second-year receiver in Jalen Reed, who was a very good player for them last year. Again, I feel like the way he finished off, there goes Sam, and I'm going to talk to myself now. Number 12, new Atlanta Falcons quarterback Kirk Cousins. Obviously coming off of the Achilles injury. He's going into, I would say, a very good situation in Atlanta. He's got Drake London. Drake London will finally have a good quarterback.
Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts.
John Robinson. Tyler Algier.
Correct. I was going to say about Pitts, this is Pitts' time to finally break through. He doesn't have Arthur Smith holding him back.
Or Desmond Ridder.
I say more Arthur Smith, but, tomato. We move up the spot. Number 11, C.J. Stroud had a remarkable rookie season with the Texans, and they only got better by adding Stephon Diggs and adding Joe Mixon. That's a very lethal offense, and they're going to put up a lot of points at field this season, and C.J. Stroud will continue to improve. And the Texans could be a force to reckon with in the AFC if everything goes well and everyone stays healthy.
Yep, I definitely agree with you there. All right, my next 5 At 15, I got Deshaun Watson, a little bit higher than Matt. Just hear me out here. Just hear me out.
I'm hearing you out. I'm a Clemson fan. I'd love to hear this.
He's got such good weapons around him. Weapons that have proven themselves time in and time out. David Njoku has been a top 5 tight end in the NFL the last 2 years.
Balled out last year.
I think he was number 3 among tight ends last year. He was like legit. I picked him up in fantasy, I think week 2 or 3 or something like that. Seriously, a great player last year. Jerry Jeudy, another really good receiver that's did really well with Denver, and now he's going to do even better with the Browns because he's not having their scheme hold him back. He doesn't have Cortland Sutton taking every target, holding him back. Amari Cooper, another really good receiver that's proven himself time in and time out. I think that Deshaun Watson is going to have a better season than he's had in the past for just the sole reason of having better weapons, along with the run game with Nick Chubb, and they'll be able to run, options and whatnot. So I don't know. I just see him taking a huge step forward this year. I'm actually really excited for it.
And once again, the whole roster itself is constructed well, but the one glaring thing, a couple of years ago when they signed him to that massive extension, they didn't think it was a problem, but now it kind of is. He's got to prove himself.
He does.
And they're still banking on the old Texan days
that he hasn't lived up to yet. And so he's really got to live up to it now. All right. At 14, I got Matt Stafford. Again, another player with elite weapons, with Puka Nacua as their wide receiver 1, and Cooper Kupp as their wide receiver 2. I mean, it's not so much as a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. It's
1A, 1B.
1B. Yep, exactly. It's exactly what I was going to say. They have 2 wide receiver 1s on their roster. And I mean, when was the last time you watched a Rams game? Probably not recently.
Well, yeah, because we are in the off season. I did watch that Thursday night game because Kyron Williams really just exploded onto the scene.
Kyron Williams is another, elite athlete that they just picked up. But I was watching, whatever Rams game some point in the season. I think they might have played the Steelers. If they played the Steelers, that's the one that I watched. But I watched Puka Nacua. He's open on every play. Every play he's open. I think he had one. What was his receptions that he had in one? It was something crazy, like 13 or something like that.
He did have double-digit receptions a lot towards the beginning of the year.
Let's see, per game. Let's see. Receptions. Week 1, he had 10 receptions, and week 2, he had 15. I mean,
I don't think Cooper Kupp played in week 2.
No joke of a receiver. Yeah. He had almost 1,500 yards this year. Now, granted, he doesn't get into the end zone very much. He only had 6 touchdowns and 0 multiple touchdown games. However, I mean, he balled out. Like, Puka Nacua exploded onto the scene. No one had any clue who this guy was, right? I mean, he was number 4 in regular season receiving yards and number 9 in receptions.
It was hard to say his name at the beginning of the year.
Well, yeah, because everyone was just like, who the heck is this Puka dude, right? Like, who's Puka Nacua, right?
Who's
No one knew who this guy was. He was a 5th-round pick in 2023. He was a rookie last year. And seriously, like, just exploded. Another absolute stud for the Rams, right? They hit on their receivers very often.
They've hit on their 5th-round draft picks for sure.
They definitely hit on their 5th-round draft picks, yeah. So that's Matt Stafford at 14, Jared Goff at 13. You have him at 15, so we're pretty close on that one. He's also got elite weapons with Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously many times over proven himself as one of the league's top receivers. I believe he's also going to be on the receiver show. Sam Laporta, who was probably one of the best rookie pass catchers this year, I would even say.
Double-digit touchdowns.
I think he had to have had over 1,000 receiving yards.
It could have been close.
Right? Let's see. Okay, he didn't have 1,000. He had 889 though, and he had 10 touchdowns. 86 receptions. I think he had a couple of 100-yard games. Let's see here. Okay, he had 100-yard game against New Orleans. He had 140 yards.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, he was consistently having, 40, 60, 80, 60, 50, 40, 50, 60, 40, just
Very consistent.
very consistent player. Just a very consistent pass catcher. He's a great blocker as well. He's a big body. Let's see. What is he? 6'3", 245 pounds. A big body. It's a big pass catcher. So, and like you said, Jameson Williams is queued up to have a really good year this year. So we'll see what they're able to do. I think the Lions are going to be a good contender. At 12, Brock Purdy. Differ here a little bit as well. You have him at 14, so pretty close. But I just think that his weapons in McCaffrey, Kittle, Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel are just gonna. They've been kind of stat padding him, to be honest. But he's got the stats, and he's got honestly, he has the talent to be this high in the quarterback rankings. He just needs to be in a good system, and he needs to be with receivers that are going to make plays. That's the same with any quarterback, I think.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
And then at 11, I have Kirk Cousins, another really close one for us. Kirk, he proved himself last year. He was having an MVP season until he tore his Achilles, right?
Yeah.
And so I definitely see him having a good couple seasons in Atlanta until they start Penix over him. Probably his last 2 years is my guess. Maybe even his last year. He'll have a couple good seasons there. I don't think he'll do what he's been doing with the Vikings. I don't think he'll get any more playoff wins. But, yeah, Kirk is definitely deserving of the number 11 spot, I think.
And I would say, I mean, we differ by one ranking, but we could, if we put quarterbacks in a tier, we would all agree are 11 to 15, 16. I mean, those are the same tier guys. Those
They're
guys
pretty similar.
They're going to go get you some wins, potential playoff spot.
I don't think we've had anyone in the same spot yet.
You're right.
I don't think we have.
We definitely will at the top. I don't think that's very much of a debate.
I don't think that one's even debatable.
Yeah. I'm gonna want to go 10 to 6 real quick.
Yeah, sure. We'll go 10 to 6, and then we'll do top 5 one by one.
Yeah. Nothing too crazy here. Maybe a little debate at 10. I have Tua in my top 10, and I also notice you don't have Tua 11 or bottom, so you have him as top 10 as well. You talk about being in the correct situation. Year 3 in the Mike McDaniel system with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. You got Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane. I'm sure they got other receivers too that I'm blanking at the moment. I'm trying to think who their tight end is because that's also very important.
Well, it was Gesicki.
It was Gesicki
years ago, but I don't know who it was this last year.
Yeah. Anywho, to when you have guys like the names mentioned, he's
OBJ is now on their team.
Now Odell Beckham, a veteran.
Braxton Berrios is their wide receiver 4, and their tight end this year is going to be Jonnu Smith.
Not terrible. He took out most targets from Kyle Pitts.
But they also got left tackle Taron Armstead.
One of the top in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's any quarterback, you could say, comes down to you got to have good pass protection. But with the weapons we just said, he's going to be threatening to be the NFL leader in passing yards. I mean, potential 5,000-yard season, potential stretch. I think Mahomes will have a 5,000-yard season. But, I mean, Tua is right there with him and threatening.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9.
I want to point out about the Dolphins in general, their secondary is stacked, okay? Jalen Ramsey and Kendall Fuller at the corners, Javon Holland at free safety, and their strong safety, Jordan Poyer.
Jordan Poyer was a little bit of a cap space cut by the Bills.
Uh-huh.
Dolphins took advantage of it. Defense has always been, I think, they're a little bit of a question mark. They do lose Christian Wilkins up front.
Mm-hmm. They
Jalen
replaced him, though, with Calais
Phillips.
Campbell.
They did sign Calais Campbell. Jalen Phillips is coming back from an Achilles injury, so it's just really a wait and see game. They still have Bradley Chubb. Defense needs to step up this year, and they hired, I believe, was I'm blanking on the name, and I'm not happy about it. Wasn't it Vic Fangio?
Is that their new?
I thought it was some older guy. I don't know why Vic Fangio sounds right, but he might have been there last year. Well,
I have no idea.
While Sam looks that up, I'm giving him a command to do that. Number 9, I have Jalen Hurts, Eagles. He's got great weapons all around. You add one of the top running backs when healthy in Saquon Barkley. You have
it's
greatest
Anthony Weaver.
Oh, Vic Fangio must have went to Philly then.
Probably. One more thing I want to say about Miami. They have a cornerback named Storm Duck.
Top 5. I don't know, top 10. I can't keep saying top 5.
That's such a good name. Storm Duck? Are you kidding me?
I mean, you're lined up one-on-one with Storm Duck.
Yeah, he's from Louisville. He's a rookie this year.
A lot of marketing with that
I
name.
want to see if I can find when he was drafted, because I think he might have been an undrafted free agent.
Starting corner number
Storm
32.
Duck.
Storm. Just thunder.
You were close. 36.
Bring the thunder and the lightning.
It's a pretty sweet.
Back to Jalen Hurts, obviously, has a great system around him. Revamped offense. One of the most lethal plays in the NFL in the tush push. Gonna stat pad those rushing touchdowns. Not much to say on that end. Just a top 10 quarterback. Number 8, Justin Herbert. He's the biggest hypothetical scenario quarterback. His receiving options are doo-doo, but he is a very talented quarterback, a gunslinger, and with Jim Harbaugh being his head coach, who knows what can happen. Hopefully we see some improvement, but he is a top 10 quarterback. With better weapons, he can definitely shoot up this list. Number 7, Dak Prescott, ultimate stat patter. Plays for Dallas, so you have to hate him. He's a good guy, though. And, with him and CeeDee Lamb have a special connection. And another year with Mike McCarthy, which I will think will be his last year if they don't win anything. At the end of the day, Dak Prescott is a good quarterback, and he does deserve his flowers, although it's tough to admit it. He deserves his due. And at 6, I had Matthew Stafford. Sam hit it on the head when he talking about the talent at receiver. You got Tyler Higbee at tight end, who's a very consistent tight end as well. We didn't mention him. You got Kyron Williams, and you have a solid defense, although you lose Aaron Donald, which that is very tough to replace. But Matthew Stafford is in line again to potentially come out victorious in the NFC, potentially give the 49ers and Eagles a challenge.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with Stafford there. I just
think it's too high.
I think he's too high, but we'll see by the end of the season. Maybe he'll be, number 1. Who knows? All right, my 10 through 6 are going to be slightly controversial. So at 10, I got Dak Prescott. Like Matt said, there's no denying he's a good quarterback. However, he needs playoff wins. He needs playoff wins for him to go up higher on the list. He has, one playoff win?
They haven't made it to the NFC Championship game in a long time.
Yeah, he's got to get some playoff wins because they make it to the playoffs every single year, and they're a first-round exit every year. Doesn't matter what seed they are. Right, so he's got to get some more playoff wins. Once he does that, I think he goes up the rankings. At 9, I have Trevor Lawrence. I know you had him at 16, and I think you got to put some respect on his name. He's done a lot with terrible receivers.
That's more than his rookie year. I mean, he's a wide receiver one. His rookie year was Laquan Treadwell.
Right. I know. That's what I'm saying. His receivers have been
year two,
absolutely atrocious.
Year two was way better. Like Christian Kirk, Zay Jones.
Christian Kirk as a wide receiver one? Give me a break, Matt.
Look at the stats. Pull up the stats. Christian Kirk.
Fine.
You're talking like Christian Kirk sucks.
I'm not saying he sucks. I'm saying he's not a wide receiver one. He's a wide receiver two.
I think he's slotted to be their wide receiver one this year.
I know he is. He had 1,000 yard year his entire career. He had 1,100 yards in 2022 with Jacksonville. Okay. Otherwise, he went for 600, 700, 600, almost 1,000 with the Cardinals. And then this last year with Jacksonville, he had almost 800. Right?
He was injured a little bit.
He's only scored 11 touchdowns with Jacksonville.
Only 11? Wow.
Only 11. He scored 17 with Arizona. And he was their wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3.
You're looking at 17 touchdowns with more years in Arizona than the 2-year window he has in Jacksonville.
Also, he's wide receiver 1, though, in Jacksonville. He's wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville. He needs to step up. He didn't even have a 1,000-yard season this last year.
Again, injured a little bit, but again, the criticism is still granted.
Also, Calvin Ridley has, in my opinion, I think he's one of the most overhyped players in the NFL. He gets open, sure. He has good hands, sure. He does not have the production of a wide receiver 1 in his career. Now, I'm going to pull up his stats so I can kind of back that up.
You definitely can. I think he had 1,000 yards last year with Jacksonville.
How many 1,000-yard seasons do you think he's had in his 5 years in the NFL?
4.
2. 2,000-yard seasons, Matt. 2. That's why I say he's overhyped. Year 1, he had 800. Year 2, he had 800. Year 3, he almost had 1,400. That was a good season.
Sorry, the 800-yard seasons. You know who that wide receiver 1 in Atlanta was?
Well, yeah, it was Julio Jones.
It's going to be tough to win targets.
That's true. But then he comes over to Jacksonville, wide receiver 1, barely cracks 1,000 yards. Barely. As a wide receiver 1, in my opinion, if you don't have 1,200 yards, you need to step up your game. As a wide receiver 1.
How many touchdowns does a wide receiver 1 need to merit then?
Wide receiver 1 needs 10 touchdowns. 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns.
I'd say 8, but again, a generally high number would make sense because you need production.
Because you're wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
You're wide receiver 1. You need to be the guy. He was not the guy. He wasn't. He barely cracked 1,000 yards. He had 1,016 yards and 8 touchdowns. Right? He had an okay season. He's an okay season for a wide receiver 1, in my opinion. Right? Because you see guys like Tyreek Hill, 1,900 yards. Jefferson, 1,800 yards. Whatever, right? Those guys are the top guys in the league. But that's another 600-700 yards on top of 1,200. I think 1,200 is definitely achievable for a serviceable wide receiver 1. Now, they do have the addition of Brian Thomas this year. Brian Thomas is one of the best wide receiver 2s that I've ever seen in college football. The only other one that I would say would rival him is another LSU guy, Ja'Marr Chase. And Ja'Marr Chase was arguably wide receiver 1. So, I think that Trevor Lawrence is definitely an underrated quarterback and that his receivers that he gets are overrated. Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley have not had outstanding careers. Calvin Ridley had the one outstanding season.
I'll agree with you on Calvin Ridley. Christian Kirk, he does need to step up. If he's going to be labeled wide receiver 1, he needs to step up.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
3,000 receiving yards, 50 touchdowns. Might need to throw for 1,000 as well.
So now they added Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas. Gabe Davis has been pretty good as a wide receiver.
Good wide receiver 2 in Buffalo.
Yeah, and Brian Thomas is a wide receiver 3. So now, in my opinion, they got wide receivers 2A, 2B, and 2C. All 3 of those guys are wide receiver 2s. They don't have a true wide receiver 1. I think if Trevor Lawrence doesn't throw for, well, let's see what his career and how he's thrown in his career. Season-wise, okay. So 3,600 is his rookie year, 4,100 his sophomore year, and 4,000 his most recent year. I think he's got to throw for 4,500 yards this year. At a minimum 4,500 yards.
Needs to cut down on turnovers. That's been his biggest issue since being in the NFL.
It really has been. His rookie year, he threw 12 touchdowns and 17 interceptions.
Rookie year, let's put a little asterisk there. That was Urban Meyer.
But this last year, he threw 21 touchdowns, 14 interceptions.
It was not pretty. And that second half of the season was very... It was bad.
It's been kind of bad. But, however, he did start running more this last year, right? 70 carries, 339 yards, 4 touchdowns. However, he fumbled 5 times. So
fumbles have been... He had a 4-fumble game in his second season in London against Denver. Yeah. College, it was never really an issue.
He had 19 turnovers this last year, right? So while I have him at 9, I think it's potential. He has potential to be 9. He just needs to step up. He needs to have at least 4,500 yards this year. I think he has to have at least 30 touchdowns because his most he's ever had in a year is 25. I think he needs 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, and less than 10 interceptions. I think that's probably fair, right?
That's very fair for a top-tier quarterback, yes.
For a top-10 quarterback, absolutely. At 8, I got Jalen Hurts. Matt covered him already. Got some of the best receivers in the game, plus the tush-push. Stat pad king. At 7, I have Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert, like you said, is one of the biggest what-ifs in the NFL. Mm-hmm. His receivers this year, we read them off, I think, just about every single podcast. But let's read them off again. Wide receiver 1, Joshua Palmer. Wide receiver 2, Quentin Johnston. Wide receiver 3, Ladd McConkey. And wide receiver 4, DJ Chark. Ladd McConkey, in my opinion, is the best of any of those receivers. I think he should be wide receiver 1.
Who is listed wide receiver 1? Josh Palmer?
Josh Palmer, who has been a serviceable wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 for the Chargers in the past.
Quentin Johnson needs to lock in.
He needs to lock in.
Just lock in.
Because let's see, I'm looking at his stats right now. He had 67 targets last year. How many do you think he caught?
I would say within the 30s.
38. He got 38.
How many drops? Does it show drops?
Let me see. I don't know if I can see that. I'm sure I can look it up.
It
doesn't show it on ESPN.
Yeah.
How many yards do you think he had?
I would say like 400, maybe even
lower. 431 and 2 touchdowns. Quentin Johnston was picked at 21. Wide receiver at 21.
That was before
over Jordan Addison, over Zay Flowers. They picked Quentin Johnston.
He did have a great year at TCU, and that's really why you draft players to do. But again, you're right.
It's the same thing. Like
looking back, that
whatsoever. He was drafted at 21 for a reason. He was great in college. Comes into the Chargers system, and boom, he's terrible.
Just what terrible. It is with TCU receivers. Jalen Reagor is a pretty, at least as Vikings fans, a great example of it.
All right, I'm looking up how many drops he had this year.
He had some very critical drops.
My stuff's loading slow. Let's see. I can't seem to find it. Oh. Well, it said he only had 3 drops this year. I don't know how
I don't believe that for a second.
I don't think that's true.
Nonetheless, yeah, Herbert doesn't have great weapons, but is a very talented quarterback.
I can't find anything else on it though. I think it may have only been 3. Oh, hold on. So okay, Quentin Johnston used to play for USF.
Before he transferred to TCU.
I guess so. His drop rate at USF, 14.5%.
I'm gonna take that as not good.
That's really bad.
Okay.
Average in the NFL
that sounded bad.
Is like 2%.
Yeah.
That's like average. 14.5% drop rate. That's 1 in what? Like 7? 1 in 7 or something like that he dropped?
Yeah.
1 in 6, I think it is. 1 in 6 or 7. That's pretty brutal. Last year in the NFL, he had 3 drops. Said he had a 4.5% drop rate. That's still pretty bad. That's not good.
Yeah.
As for quote unquote high tier wide receiver.
They're very critical drops too. That's why I thought of it.
Right. I mean, there was the one that was the game, or the 2, I suppose, that were the game winners that he dropped.
Yep, that one against Green Bay, and I couldn't tell you the other one.
I believe he had one against the Vikings. That was a pretty big one as well.
He could have.
I don't 100% remember.
I just remember Christian Watson's welcome to the NFL moment against the Vikings. Wide open touchdown through the hands.
Yep. Well, that and, he gets locked up by the Vikings corners, but we're not going to get into that right now. And then at QB6, I have CJ Stroud. I think, you have him at 11, and I think that's fair because he's a second-year quarterback. But here's the thing. Name a quarterback with better receivers. I don't think you can.
Couldn't off the top of my head, no.
Nick Dell and Nico Collins as his wide receivers, right? I think he had 4,300 yards or something last year. Let's see.
Sounds about right. Again, at the end of the year, he could easily...
Okay, so he had 4,100 yards last year, but he also had almost 500 in the postseason. So, let's see, 4,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. His quarterback or his passer rating was 100.8.
Dang.
Yeah, seriously, he was number 8 in passing yards.
He also has Dalton Schultz as his tight end.
Yes, Dalton Schultz is his tight end, another underrated pass catcher. So here's the thing, CJ Stroud, I think that there's a possibility that the Texans could be Super Bowl contenders this year.
Gotta get past the Chiefs, though. That's obviously the number one.
It's the hardest thing. It's been shown to be the hardest thing to do in the playoffs. No one gets past the Chiefs. It's tough. The Bengals did it one time.
Patriots did it his Mahomes' first year. That was with Tom Brady. So you had someone to compete with him.
And Joe Burrow, has Joe Burrow lost to Patrick Mahomes? I don't think he has.
The AFC Championship game the year after.
Oh, yes. Yep, you're right.
When they called it
year after the Bengals went to the Super Bowl.
After they called it Burrowhead, like dummies.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. CJ Stroud, outstanding player.
I'm definitely at the end of the year could be a top 5.
Yes.
He'll prove it again. I don't think that's a
I don't think there's a question in that. So
no.
I think that there's maybe only like 1 or 2 players that we don't share in the top 5.
I think our top 5 will be fairly consistent.
They're going to be pretty similar, I think. So why don't you go ahead and reveal number 5?
Yeah, this one will spark controversy. Aaron Rodgers. Hear me out. In a 2-minute drill of any quarterback in the NFL, when you're in the 2-minute drill, give this guy the ball. He's going to go down the field, and he's going to get you a touchdown. He's going to do whatever it takes. Besides Mahomes, that number 2 guy is Aaron Rodgers. He gets it done in crunch time. Okay?
I will
don't
give
care
it to
that his
you.
receivers are
I
not
will,
as good as they once were in Green Bay. He took terrible receivers. His wide receiver number one for a good chunk in his late tenure in Green Bay was Alan Lazard. There were no excuses, and he got it done. It's easy to hate on the guy. Believe me, I know, and I do it. You can't hate on his skill on the field. He just gets it done. He's won a Super Bowl. That was a long time ago, but he's proven he can win in the big game. In the biggest of games, he's going to perform his best. That's why he won back-to-back MVPs at that one point post-COVID era. It's very risky to put him top 5, just given he hasn't played an entire season. But I think if he's fully healthy and Robert Saleh and they put together an O-line, and this is, again, a dream scenario that's not going to happen. Mike Williams stays healthy an entire season. The rapport between Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers is hopefully elite, to where Garrett Wilson can maybe be a 1,500-plus yard receiver. They add Braylon Allen in the running back room, beast. Okay, they have Breece Hall. They have a great running back room. The defense with Sauce Gardner, they got lockdown corners. It was DJ Reed as well. If the stars align and everything falls into place, the Jets can make a run at this. And then it's the same thing we just said. They got to get past the likes of Baltimore. They got to get past the likes of Houston and the Kansas City Chiefs. But if there's one quarterback that can do it, it's Aaron Rodgers.
You know what? I'm gonna throw a stat at you. Okay. And just to keep this in mind, so Aaron Rodgers has been playing since 2005. So he's going into year 19. He's had
he'll be 40.
One season where he had at least 4,500 yards, and that year he had 43. It was also one of only 3 seasons in which he threw 40 touchdowns. Now, something I will give him, he does not turn the ball over very much. His touchdown to interception ratio is 475 to 105. 105 interceptions in 19 years is pretty
ridiculous.
good. That's pretty good. However, I think that a lot of people don't realize, because I think that an outstanding year for a quarterback is 4,500 yards, right? I think that's like a standard for like an outstanding season for a quarterback.
That's MVP caliber season. Don't matter who it is.
But he's only had one season where he did that. So
but the difference,
we'll see if he's able to do it now. I mean, that season,
I don't think he'll eclipse 4,500 yards, but he's also, sorry.
No, you're good. It was 2011. So I think Jordy Nelson was still playing at that time. Jordy Nelson was probably their wide receiver one. But at the same time, it's Aaron Rodgers. He's a household name. And like you said, he's probably one of the most chill, clutch guys in the NFL. So,
and there were multiple MVPs he won where he didn't eclipse 4,500.
Exactly.
We just saw Lamar Jackson. I don't even think he eclipsed 3,500 yards when he won MVP last year.
He also had almost 1,000 rushing yards.
Again, we're not going to talk about. You're correct. You're correct.
Aaron Rodgers has never been a running quarterback. He scrambles behind the line of scrimmage. He's like, Fran Tarkenton, scrambling Fran, right? He's never had more than, 369 rushing yards was the most rushing yards he ever had in a season. And 5 rushing touchdowns is the most rushing touchdowns he's had in a season. He's been a dog. He's been a dog. We know this. It's Aaron Rodgers. I would not personally put him at 5, but I think you can definitely make the argument that he could even be number 3.
Absolutely.
All right. My number 5 also might ruffle some feathers. I got Tua Tagovailoa. Now, talk about a quarterback that's just in the right situation, like you said about him, right? Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, perfect. That's all you need. That's all you need. Any quarterback can succeed with that.
Just run go routes down the field.
Receiver. And Tua, now granted that he's got a lot of haters, I think that regardless, he's a good quarterback. Regardless of having those 2 outstanding receivers, I think you put him in a situation. Let's say you throw him on the Steelers or something like that. You got a headline wide receiver 1 and a couple nobodies, right? I think he still has, good good seasons, right? Tua is I like Tua a lot, to be honest. I think people hate on him way too much. And let's see. I think he's had a couple really good seasons.
He's come back from some pretty scary injuries as well. He's a guy you want to root for.
That's what I'm saying, right? He's an underdog. And this last season, he had a great season. 4,600 yards, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Now, the interceptions are that's a bit of a red flag. But at the same time, how many quarterbacks have ever thrown for 4,600 yards in a career? In a career season? Not many. Aaron Rodgers did it once.
Yeah.
There's very few quarterbacks that have done that. So, I mean, I think he's really just poised for a really good season. Plus, his passer ratings in the last 2 years, 105.5 and 101.1.
And now you look at the team aspect, they got to go out and win to really help his case, to build his case. You got Tyreek Hill could potentially be a 2,000-yard receiver this season.
Exactly. Right. And so, you know, people might be like, oh, well, he wouldn't be anything without Tyreek. Well, you give Tyreek to any quarterback.
Mahomes proved himself after Tyreek Hill, but no.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Give Tyreek Hill to any quarterback and they will succeed.
Yeah.
Give him to Sam Darnold. Put him on the Patriots. Whatever. He's gonna make plays. I mean, I think anywhere Tyreek Hill goes, he'll have at least 1,600 yards. I don't think there's a way that he could have less than 1,600 yards anywhere he goes, because he's just that much of a stud, and that helps Tua quite a bit with his ranking. But at the same time, give him to anyone else, and then their ranking shoots up.
Very true.
Know what I mean? Tyreek Hill's a special player. He makes everyone around him better. And Tua is one of those guys that's around him that's just being elevated by Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle's play.
Absolutely. Shoot up to number 4, Joe Burrow. I mean, had a very special season a couple years back when they went to the Super Bowl. He still has Jamar Chase. You just going to unveil Joe Burrow? Yeah.
I'm going to unveil Joe Burrow. Yeah. I mean, we got them in the same spot. I think our top 3 are also going to be either the same or incredibly similar. We have the same 3 guys up there. So yeah. I have a feeling they'll be the same. I don't know for sure. But honestly, yeah, Joe Burrow proved himself time in, time out. He's a special quarterback.
The way he was able to elevate in a full season of starting, okay, in 2 full seasons that he has started, AFC Championship game appearance, 2, 1 ended in the AFC Championship, and 1 went to the Super Bowl. In 2 full seasons that he started, this team has gone deep into the playoffs. And you can maybe even make the same argument that you make about Tua. It's the weapons around him that makes Burrow good. But you could also say a guy like Tua, a guy like Burrow elevates his teammates as well. T. Higgins had some of his best seasons when Joe Burrow was in town. Granted, they were in the same draft class, so that's not too crazy of a statement. But yeah, that's a very fitting place. He can easily shoot up that board if he gets a Super Bowl.
And so 2021 was Burrow's best year. That's the year they went to the Super Bowl, I believe.
Correct.
His stats that year were ridiculously good, okay? He went 366 for 520, which is 70.4% completion. He had 4,600 yards. He averaged 8.9 yards per completion. He had 34 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. He got sacked 51 times, and his passer rating was 108.3.
That was a big highlight during their playoff run. I think it was the most sacked quarterback in an entire playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Gets sacked a lot, and he still put up those stats. And then the next year, he went 414 for 606 for 68.3% completion, 4,475 yards, 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, passer rating of 100.8. Like, here's the thing. Joe Burrow's a very special quarterback. He's gone for almost 4,500 yards twice in his young career. He's going into his 5th year only. You know what I mean?
He's a little bit on the,
injured for he was injured his rookie year, and then this last year he had an injury. Both seasons he was still playing at a very elite level.
Joe Burrow is a little bit on the older side for a guy heading into his 5th year, though, 27, but still, 27 is young. And he's got at least 10 more years, maybe even more.
I would say a minimum of 10 years.
It's like Zach Taylor and that Bengals organization just has to keep getting talent. I know they're probably going to lose T. Higgins after this season. They just can't afford him. So that's where you scout in the draft and you go get another playmaker for him. You lose Joe Mixon. I think they added Zach Moss. But you just got to fill in these spots. But yeah, at the same time, it doesn't matter because I think Joe Burrow can really elevate anyone who comes in. Tyler Boyd had some of his best seasons when Joe Burrow was in town.
Yeah. So Joe Burrow, just a very, very special player. I think that he'll go on to win a couple of MVPs before he retires eventually. And I think there's a possibility that he'll even have a 5,000-yard season at some point.
And I would not be surprised by that. If it's this year, next year, it's going to be soon.
It's going to be within the next 3 years, I think.
All right. We hit the top 3, boys. It's been a long time. Definitely longer than I thought it would go, but here we are, top 3. Josh Allen. This is a big prove me year. You just want to unveil the top because I think we have the same guys now.
I would assume. Well, who do you have at number 2? I want to see.
We got Patrick Mahomes is number 2.
Okay. We got the same top 3. Okay, let's talk about Josh Allen first, though.
This is a huge year for Josh Allen. This is his first year without Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs elevated Josh Allen's play. Now he's got to prove that he can put up these numbers. He can be this star quarterback without a legit wide receiver 1. That's really the biggest thing I can say about him because we've seen what he can do. He's a very good quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen is the epitome of a strong arm quarterback.
He's the reason guys like Will Levis are getting shots in the NFL.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Josh Allen, he had one 4,500-yard season in 2020, but his last 4 straight seasons, he's gone for at least 42, almost 4,300 yards and 29 touchdowns was his lowest. He went 29 this last year, but 2022 he had 35, 2021 36, 2020 37. Now, along those last 4 years, he's also had at least 10 interceptions in each year, having 18 in the last year. However, and this is the argument that I'm going to make about quarterbacks who have a lot of interceptions, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier before we got to the top 3. If you look at the trends, the quarterbacks who pass more have more interceptions. That's just how it goes. You know what I mean? Now, 18 is a lot. 18 is insane. But it's like 10 interceptions, that's nothing too crazy, right? I mean, every starting quarterback is going to throw at least 5, as we saw with CJ Stroud, who only threw 5 this last year. They're going to throw at least 5, right? And so now Josh Allen coming into a season where they don't have a true wide receiver 1 is probably going to be Keon Coleman. Buffalo's in an interesting spot now. Now they don't have, Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. They lost them both this last year. Their defense is going to be a lot worse. They cut like half their defense, which was crazy. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that what's his name that died is now going to be their starting safety.
Damar Hamlin?
Damar Hamlin, yeah. I think he's keyed in to be a starting safety for them this year. So the Bills are just in a bad situation. Josh Allen is in a bad situation. But he has more talent than almost any other quarterback I've seen. Now, not only is he throwing for at least 4,200 yards a season,
he's running for at least
rushing for at least 500.
Yeah.
In 2021, he had 763 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns. 2022, 762 and 7 touchdowns. Last year, he had 524 rushing yards, 15 rushing touchdowns, Matt. 15
He,
rushing touchdowns.
he was their whole offense last year. They made him do it all.
Stephon Diggs was catching the passes, but Josh Allen was the stud of the team. He was the number one player on the team.
No question.
He elevates every player around him on the offense, on the defense, on the special teams. He elevates everyone. Everyone aspires to have the mindset of Josh Allen because he's just that good.
I feel like he attracts potential free agents too.
Yes,
we haven't really seen that yet, but I feel like that's a guy you want to. His attitude, the way he approaches the game, that's a guy you want to be around. I also mentioned their probably top pass catcher will be Dalton Kincaid entering this season.
It definitely could be.
Top wide receiver, if we want to go by position, Keon Coleman, great personality. Him and Josh Allen will definitely hit it off. But yeah, this is a chance for Josh Allen to prove everyone wrong that he doesn't need an all-world receiver like Stephon Diggs to make him better.
Yeah. All right, moving on to number 2, Lamar Jackson. I mean, there's no question about it. He's one of the best rushers in the NFL. Best
athlete at the quarterback position.
He is the best overall athlete at the quarterback position, 100%. He's had 2,000-yard rushing seasons. He has never put up more than 7 rushing touchdowns, but also in 2019, this is a long time ago, granted, he had 36 passing touchdowns and 6 interceptions. 36 passing touchdowns.
36 passing touchdowns in an offense that prefaced running the football.
Exactly. And he had a passer rating of 113.3. Now, he's never thrown for more than 3,600, 3,700 yards in a season, and normally he's been throwing around 22 to 2,800. However, he's adding on way more yards on the ground. So, say what you want about Lamar Jackson. He's one of the most electric players in football, I think.
Absolutely. I would just say, if there's a critique, it's always been his ability to pass the football. You hear defensive coordinators come out and say, Lamar Jackson, if he throws the football to beat us, we can live with that. We don't want him running the football. So if he can just become a consistent passer, he doesn't need to be the elite passers like Patrick Mahomes that's on top of the list or Josh Allen. As long as he can be consistent, that goes a long way and can open up the offense. What they did last year with Todd Monken in his first season, now entering his second season, you add Zay Flowers. You hope a guy like Rashad Bateman can step up. Okay, Nelson Aguilar caught a lot of touchdowns. Not what he did in Philadelphia. But yeah, just be consistent, I think, is the biggest thing with Lamar Jackson. And I would not be shocked if he went back-to-back in MVPs.
100%. All right, and now on to the number 1. I don't think this one was ever a question with anyone. It's Patrick Mahomes.
He's in a tier of his own.
He's in a tier of his own because he is, to be honest, probably the best quarterback of all time. And now there are going to be people that are like, well, what about Tom Brady? Well, what about the Manning brothers? What?
Eli, he's already better than Eli.
Okay, he's way better than Eli. He's never been at the Peyton Manning level passing wise. Because I think Peyton had a crazy season where he had like 5,600 passing yards and 56 touchdowns.
He also threw a lot of interceptions, which
also threw a lot of interceptions.
About quarterbacks who throw more will throw more interceptions.
However, Patrick Mahomes, he's got 2 5,000-yard seasons. 2 of them. There's not a lot of quarterbacks that even have 1. And he's had 2 seasons where he had over 4,700-yard passing as well. So he also had a year where he had 50 touchdown passes, which is...
That was his first year as a starter.
First year as a starter. He went 383 for 580. He had 5,097 passing yards, 50 touchdowns, and only 12 interceptions.
And that's what happens when Tyreek Hill is on your team.
That's what happens when and that's why Tua gets a little step at it. But Patrick Mahomes, okay, he is the best quarterback of all time, in my opinion. I don't know the guy's name. He's the guy, the analyst with like the slicked back hair.
Mel Kiper?
Big nose. I don't know. Might be Mel Kiper. I don't think it's Mel
Was it a
Kiper.
draft guy or was he?
No, he's not a draft guy. He's just like a TV personality. He's always screaming and whatever. He said Patrick Mahomes is the best player to ever play the game.
That sounds like something Dan Orlovsky would say.
It might be Orlovsky.
But I don't know about slick back hair. But anyway, to your point, last year statistically was one of his worst seasons.
It was.
Doesn't matter. Didn't matter because you know what they did at the end of the year? They won a Super Bowl.
The freaking Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl
with Kadarius Toney,
Cole
Hardman,
wide receiver 2, Marquez Valdez-Scantling as wide receiver 1. Like
Travis Kelce didn't even have. He didn't even close 1,000 yards. He had a down year.
We talked about that frequently on this podcast. He did not have 1,000 yards last year, and now they went to the draft and they got a receiver.
Xavier Worthy, one of the fastest receiver in combine history.
They're trying to replace Tyreek Hill.
You get
it's not possible to replace him, but they're finding a new,
production
speed demon. They're finding a speed demon for their deep shot production because Patrick Mahomes didn't have a deep target that could catch the ball last year.
I mean, he had a deep target, but the second part of that, they didn't have a guy who could catch the ball.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling on a deep route, he's going to drop the ball.
They also had Hollywood Brown.
Yep, Hollywood Brown, Xavier
Rice, who will play. Now, granted, who knows what's going to happen with potential looming suspension.
Issues. Yeah.
But when he's on the field and not driving
this year, so Patrick Mahomes, he's probably got this season one of the best surrounding casts of all he's ever had. I think it is not. I don't think it's absurd to say that he could go for 5,400 yards.
He might. He could. I don't think Peyton Manning has the record. It would
be absurd to say that. I think he'll go for over 5,000 is my guess. If him and all of his receivers stay healthy all season, but you also got to think now they actually got a run game with Isaiah Pacheco. So we'll see. I think Pacheco also goes for over 1,000 yards this year on the ground.
5,000-yard passer, 1,000-yard rusher. I mean, this
1,500-yard receiver potentially. I mean,
potential the next coming of the greatest show on turf.
Here's the thing: the Chiefs are probably the biggest powerhouse in football. Maybe, I mean, not ever. I mean, the Patriots, the 2000s and late 90s Patriots were ridiculously good, right?
Absolutely.
Patrick Mahomes, I think, is going to lead the Chiefs to another Super Bowl.
Would that be the first three-peat?
It would be the first ever three-peat.
I thought, because initially when the start of the NFL, I know Dallas would never win a Super Bowl. What am I kidding? Green Bay won the first two.
Green Bay did win the first two.
So they were
close
to start. And
now I will say that their defense is going to be lacking a little bit. They got a couple no names on their defense, like Jalen Watson at their right corner and Brian Cook at free safety. A couple guys I've never heard of, but a couple good returning guys like Drew Tranquill, Nick Bolton, Chris Jones, Derek Nottie, Justin Reed at strong safety, Trent McDuffie at the left corner. So they just have such an elite team, and I don't see them not, doing the three-peat. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be them.
And you talk about the little lack of talent, but you also have a mastermind in Steve Spagnuolo who's able to come up with great schemes that can blanket Tyreek Hill in a wild card game. He's been getting his due lately, but he's been doing this for a long time. And we haven't given him the credit he deserves.
You're exactly right. All right. Well, I think that just about wraps it up. So thank you for everyone watching. I saw one person going in and out of the viewers the whole time. So appreciate you guys for watching. As always, SKOL Vikings. We'll see you next time.
We're missing Joel. He usually does our outro.
We are. I know. I'm sorry. I'm not great at it, but
SKOL Vikings. That's good enough.
SKOL Vikings.
We'll see you guys next week.